All right. So, hello, this is the first session of our 5-day Excel training program. Now, the whole idea of doing this program is I can understand a lot of you are going to be starting your MBA program soon, or there are some of you who are possibly going to be working somewhere. And you are going to be using Excel a lot, whether it's your B school or whether it's your work. So, the whole point of doing this is to make you comfortable with all the functions that you will be using on a typically that you will use, because there are a lot of things in Excel, and an average or a moderate user will not be using things beyond what we are going to be discussing in this particular 5 or 6 days that we have. So today we are going to be discussing a few things, that is accessing ribbon. So basically, once you start Excel, the first thing that you see is the ribbon and the sheet. So we'll be discussing that bit. I have some data that I have put here. So we'll get into how to sort data and everything. I'll talk about format painter. I'll talk about positions of cell, because that is what we use in some of the other sessions that we have, wherein we have to give references and so on, and then creating copy of a sheet, and a few small things that we'll be discussing today. Okay. So whenever you open Excel, now I'm using Excel 2016. So if you see Word, PowerPoint, Excel, all of them, at least for now, they are having a 3-year development cycle. So I'm pretty sure some of you have used 2007, 10, then there was 13 in between, and then now you have 2016 versions that are the latest ones. The next might be 2019, I guess. So I'm using 2016, but even if you're using something else, let's say an older version of Excel, maybe 2010 or 13 or 7 for that matter, there'll be a few things that will look different. There'll be a few things that you will not find in those older functions. However, most of the other things you'll be able to manage. So, for example, I think spark lines, pivot chart, these some of these functions were not there in the older versions of Excel, and I think they introduced in either 2016, if I'm not wrong. So, some of those things will not be there, but don't worry about that, because the 90% of the functions haven't really changed over these development cycles that they have followed. Now, when you open Excel, you will typically start with a blank sheet. Okay. So this is a sheet and this is the area of the sheet. So now if you see that, you can scroll through the entire sheet. So if I am on this particular cell right now, this highlighted cell, you can see here A1. Okay. So this is the position of the cell. So we are talking about A, which is referring to column, and 1, which is referring to row. So when we say A1, we are looking at the intersection of column A and row 1. Okay, if I, let's say, point here and this particular cell, this is G6. So this is in G row and G column, and this is the 6th row. Okay. Now, in the current version of Excel, you can, if I just click on press Control and right arrow key, I go to the extreme right end of the sheet, and you can see here that this is column XFD. Okay. So you don't have anything beyond this. Okay, so this is XFD as the last column that you will find. When it comes to rows, if you just go to the first cell and then press Control down arrow key, I'll come to the extreme end of the sheet, and this row is referring to 1048576. So 10,48,576 rows are present in this Excel sheet. So whenever we use any particular cell, the cell is identified with its position. So as I said, now if I'm in this particular cell, this is C2. So whenever I write, let's say, whatever I write here, ABC, this ABC gets written only in that particular cell. Now I can copy this in other cells. I can write something in front of it, write something below it, and so on. So I can write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let's say C, D, E. So basically you can just write anything that you want. So whether it is putting dates, whether it is putting comments, whether it is some text string, names of people, whatever, contact numbers, or anything. So you can put numbers, you can put text, you can write whatever you want to write. But the way you would work around this data, you have to be a little careful as to what you are doing, because you need to exactly know, because otherwise when you sort and everything, you might end up making some mistakes. Okay. So the first thing that you see, is, as I said, is the blank sheet. Okay, and you can add and delete sheets. So if you see at the bottom, this next to this sheet too, I have this plus sign. So when I click on plus, it says new sheet. So if I click on plus, I'm going to get a fresh sheet, and it's a blank sheet. I can do whatever I want with that particular sheet. Now I have, so right now we have three sheets in this particular file. We have data. I just created sheet 2 and sheet 3. By double clicking on this or by right clicking, we'll be able to give some name to this particular sheet. And this is very useful if you have multiple sheets. So let's say if you want to give some name here, demo sheet, for example. Then identifying sheets using their names is it's something that makes it easy for others to understand. So if you send somebody a sheet, you can, I mean, the entire file, you can always tell that person, hey, I want you to refer to this particular demo sheet in this particular file, and that person will be able to locate that. Otherwise, if you don't tell somebody, people will not be able to understand which sheet you're talking about. Again, with sheets, you can do a lot of things. So if you just right click, you will be able to see that. So inserting new sheet, deleting a particular sheet, giving name or renaming a sheet, moving or copying it from one file to another, view code, protecting sheet, which is useful if you're sending it to somebody and you want to lock that particular sheet so that that other person is not able to play around that data. Giving tab color. So if you want, let's say, want to give color to this, let me give red color here. So you can see this particular sheet becomes the background of that, but becomes red. Okay, but not very useful apart from the visual input that it gives. You can hide a particular sheet if you don't want people to see it, and you can select all sheets at a point of time, and so on. Okay. So now what I've done is I've just put some random data. I have put roll numbers, names of the students, subject, and score. And before we get into the whole data bit, we'll get into the ribbon part. Okay. So once you open Excel, this is the first thing that you will see, apart from the sheet that is there. You will see file, home, insert, page layout, formula, data, review, view, and so on. Okay. So what all things you have here? Now we'll not be getting into each and every function that is out there because it's pretty vast and it will take a lot of time. But a few basic things that you will be using on the home tab is pasting. So if you're copying data from one cell or multiple cells to another location, you can cut some data, you can copy, you can paste. There's format painter. There are a few other additional functions that you can click here, and then you'll be able to access those things. So if you click here, if you're using Excel 2016, you have this small down arrow that you have. So if you click on that, you get more functions that you can use. So for example, now under this particular font area, if I click here, I'll be able to see all the things that I can do. So number, alignment, font, border, fill protection, and so on. Now, the other thing is it gives you information about the current data that you have. So right now I'm clicking, let's say here, which is score. I can see that the text is in bold. So it is highlighting that it is in bold. I can have italic, I can underline it, I can do whatever I want. Then I have the font, so Calibri, font size 13. I can increase or decrease the font size. I can give a background color. So if I want to just give this cell some color, I can highlight it yellow. I can also change the color. So whatever color palette that you have. I can also change the color of the font that I am having. So if score is given, I can make it, let's say I want to make it yellow. So I made it yellow. If you want to make it green, you can make it green, and so on. So that is to give the cell some background color and change the color of the font that you have. Okay. You can all, at any point of time, you can do Control Z, and keep going back to the earlier step. Now here again, the positions of where the text gets written. So for example, now this score is written at the bottom of the cell. So if I click here, then it will come in the middle. If I click here, it goes to the top. This is alignment for the left side. This is center, and this is for the right side. So if I select this and this, it comes exactly at the center of that particular cell. Okay. Now, so once I have this, this is called the format of that particular cell, because these are cosmetic things. The font size, the color of the cell, and everything. These are cosmetic changes. Now I can replicate that for other cells. So there's this thing called Format Painter. So let's say I want to have the same formatting for subject. Now I'll have to click on this, I'll have to put it in the center and so on, so that I get it exactly in the same format. But instead of that, what I can do is I can simply click on Format Painter, which basically takes all the cosmetic changes that I've done, and I can just click it on some other cell, and that automatically gets the formatting that we're talking about. Now, let's say I'll further change. Let's say I make it some cream color. I make the text red. I put italic and make it underline. And I want to have roll number written in the same format. I just click on this, click on Format Painter, and then click here. So roll number, it basically copies the entire formatting that is there. Now let's keep it normal because this looks pretty odd, so not very visually pleasing. So typically, using colors in Excel is okay, but if you use it for headers and everything, it's fine. But otherwise, it doesn't look very professional. So there's no point putting really fancy colors and everything in Excel, because we are working in a professional setup. Right? So we'll keep it as simple as possible. Now, if I want to put the formatting over multiple cells, I can just freeze it. So instead of clicking once on Format Painter, let me click twice. So if I click on Format Painter twice, it gets frozen, and then I can just drag it over multiple areas. So what you see is it has taken the formatting of Manish as cell, and then I applied it over this particular entire range. Now I can change for individual cells as I showed you guys. Let's say this is the formatting that we want. So I can use Format Painter and then just drag it, and others will also have the same formatting. If I, let's say, put a box around it, all borders, and I use that Format Painter, the other cells will also get a border. Okay. I hope you guys are following this. In case you have any difficulty, please use the chat function. Let me know if you're finding it a little too fast. But this is something that you will learn a lot if you explore. So the whole point is to sit with an Excel sheet and try all the functions that are there. You won't make, you'll definitely make some mistakes, but you will learn through that process rather than somebody just sitting and teaching you how to do it. Unless you do it, you'll not be able to understand it really well. Okay. So there are a lot of things: wrap text, merge and center, and so on, that you can use. Wrap text is essentially to cover the entire data in a particular cell. So for example, if I have a long sentence here, let's say this is the sentence. Now what you see is the sentence is written in only F2, but I can see it going over G2, H2, I2, and J2, right? So if I just want to put this entire thing in so that I don't see it in other cells, I can simply click on wrap text, and it will make sure that the entire thing that is written gets, it sort of fits in that particular cell itself. If I just do Control Z again, I'll be able to see the way it was. Or I can double click here and make sure that I increase the length of this particular column so that the entire thing fits in one particular cell. Okay, but that is more from the visualization point of view. Coming to merge and center, it merges the content of two cells and puts it in the center. Now, then you have a lot of these functions. So general is basically how a particular data gets written. So general is a regular text or whatever you write. Then you have your number, currency, accounting, short date, percentage, time, and so on. So all these things you can explore at your end, because, for example, this decimal point, right? Now I have 99 as a number. So I can do this so that I'm putting decimal points, increasing that. You will see it here. Or I can decrease the decimal points that are there. Okay. Or I can, if I make this percentage, for example, then immediately it will become 9900%. If let's say I want to put this as currency, so $99, I simply click here and make it $99. You can also put INR and so on. Some of these areas we'll get into at later stages. So conditional formatting, I think we'll be discussing in the second or the third session that we are going to do. So today we'll not be discussing some of these things. Okay. Insert deals with inserting things in Excel. So either it is, say, a pivot table, which is table for the data, pivot chart, a regular table, some other chart based on the data that you have. So there are a lot of things, charts, spark lines, filters, and we'll be getting into these things in later sessions. Page layout talks about the page, so margins, orientation, size. If you want to print, then only print the area and so on. So all these are very straightforward things. Formula will be spending a lot of time in the third and the fourth session. The advantage that we have in 2016 Excel is you don't have to remember each and every function that is there. You can sort of look for the function here, but it's always good to know the syntax and the exact function, at least for a few things that you'll be using on a regular basis. So you have financial, logical, text, date and time, lookup, reference, all these things, but we'll not be getting into each and everything because there are too many functions. We'll be using the ones that you will need typically to do your work or during your MBA program. Data is something that we'll be using a lot. So sort, filter, and we'll be discussing this in today's session as well. In review, if you're sending it to somebody, as I said, protecting sheet, protecting workbook, allowing certain ranges to be edited, all these things you can cover in this particular tab. In view, you can change how it looks. You can freeze panes. For example, let's say if you want to freeze roll numbers and you want to freeze the name of the student, so and you have to scroll through the other data, what you can do is you can freeze panes here. So freeze panes essentially means that the front, the first row, now you will see that it is frozen. So when I go down, I can still see the front row, the first row, no matter what happens. And similarly, if I go to the right side, I'll still be able to see the first column that is there. So that is more on the viewing part, especially if you have a very large sheet that you're working with. Okay, and we'll be taking some of those examples in subsequent sessions that we have. So this is your ribbon, and ribbon is like the most, this is basically where you will find all your tools. If you need anything, you will be going to the ribbon and try to see where you will find what you're looking for. Now coming to the next bit, which is sorting data. So we'll be using this data that I have here, and we'll be looking at a few quick functions today. Okay. So now this is the data that is given. There are 18 students who have taken some particular test, three different subjects, science, mathematics, and English, and you have their scores out of 100, and you have names of those students. Okay. Now, the first thing that we are going to see is when you have a table like this, okay, you can't sort data randomly. You can't simply say, because this is not very easy to see. There's no inference that you can draw from this. So if I want to work with this data, it's not the best way in which the data is represented. Okay, just raw data, name of the student, subject, and score. So maybe if I just want to sort this data, there are multiple ways in which I can sort. Okay. So the first thing that we do is when we sort anything is we select the whole thing. Okay, because you can't select only some part and then sort it. If I just select names of students and sort this data alphabetically, it will completely change the data that is there. Because if I sort alphabetically, let's say, I don't know, I think Akshay will come first because that's the first thing. So if we sort and Akshay comes first and the rest of the data remains the way it is, it will mean that Akshay has scored 99 in science. But the fact is Akshay is getting 50 in science. So whenever we are working with a table, we'll be using the entire table while sorting. Okay, and that's possibly the most important thing about tables, that you have to sort, you have to select the entire table and then use sort. If you use only one column, Excel itself will prompt you that, are you sure that you want to continue with the current selection or you want to expand the selection that you have? Okay, so let's first sort this table, and we'll sort it in multiple ways. Okay, so I've selected this table. Now I click on data. Okay, in data I click on sort. Now when I click on sort, you will see that this new window opens, and in this window you will be able to see add level, delete level, copy level, and so on. My data has headers, column, sort by, sort on, and order. Now, sort by is essentially the basis on which you're going to be sorting. So are you going to sort on roll numbers? Are you going to sort on name of the student? Are you going to sort on the subject? Or you're going to sort on the score? Okay. So now let's say we decide to sort on the basis of roll number, and I want to see from highest to lowest. Okay, sort on cell values. So cell values is what it will be, and order will be largest to smallest because I want to see from 18 to 1. Now, the moment I click on my data has headers, because these are the headers, roll number, name of the student, these are headers for my data. So when I say OK, it gets sorted in the reverse order. Okay, so now the entire table has been turned on its head from 1 to 18 the way it was. It is now 18 to 1. Okay. Now I can select the same table again. I can click on sort, and I can say roll number smallest to largest and get it back to the way it was in the beginning. All right. Now I can also sort on a few other things that are there. So let's say if I want to sort on name of the student, now what you will see is cell value, cell color, font color, because these are also things that you can use to sort data. But let's keep it on cell values, and order is A to Z, so alphabetical order. And now we can see that the alphabetical order is only for this, but correspondingly their roll number, whatever it was. So Akshay was roll number 8, Manish was roll number 1. So that has remained the way it is. Okay, because the entire table gets sorted. So now you will see this is in alphabetical order. Now let's say you want to sort this on the basis of the subjects. So if I sort it, I'll get, you will see English, then you have mathematics, and then you have science. So now this is slightly easier to read. So if I just want to see, okay, who did well in English, I can, if once I'm done with sorting, I know that these are only the English scores that are there. So clearly this person, Nidhi, has done outstanding in English. Similarly, if I just want to see what is the total of all the students in English, I can simply select this data and it will show me here. Average is 68.5, count is 6, sum is 411, and so on. So English, mathematics, science, six students in each of the subjects, and you can see the test scores corresponding to those students. Let's say I want to sort this data on the basis of score. So we want to figure out who scored the highest. Okay. So we'll select score here, largest to smallest. I'll select OK. And now you can see that Manish is the one who has scored the highest out of all the students, and Akshay has scored the lowest. So the data is now sorted on the basis of the score in these exams. All right. So working with data is that way very easy. You have to keep few things in mind, and that will make sure that you don't make mistakes. But if you just select some area, let's say I select only this, and I say sort, okay. What I told you about Excel giving warning is this: that Excel will say that it found data next to your selection. Since you are not selected this data, it will not be sorted. So if you continue with the current selection, you will make a mistake. But if you expand the selection, then it will select the whole thing, and then I can now use this data and then sort and make it the way it was. Okay, so always remember, select the entire data when you're working with any table or data range that is given to you. Okay, so this is regarding sorting of the data. Now we'll be looking at a few shortcuts as well. So one thing that I wanted to show you guys was how to use the Alt key. Okay, because Alt key is very important when you're using Excel, especially because in a lot of cases you'll not be having a mouse and everything, and it becomes very easy to know the keyboard shortcuts that are there. So how you can access ribbon from your keyboard is you just press Alt key. Okay, now when you press Alt key, you will see that a few things get highlighted here. So now you don't see anything here, but the moment I press Alt key on my keyboard, you will see that I have F, H, N, P, M, A, R, W, Y, and so on. Okay, so what it does is it gives you how you can access. So let's say I want to access the data function. I'll press Alt, and under data you see A, right? So in this state, if I press A, I'll enter the data tab. Okay, and now again in this you have different areas getting highlighted, right? So if I want to put a filter, you can see that this is T. Okay, which means that in a normal state, the way you are working in an Excel sheet right now, if you just press Alt A T in quick succession, you'll be able to put a filter. So I'll just click anywhere here. I'll say Alt A T, and it has put these filters for the data. Okay, So if I just press again Alt AT, it will remove that filter. Alt AT, it will bring the filter back. Okay. And once I have the filters are essentially used to filter out data. Okay. So if I want to just select people, just want to look at scores in science, I can click here on the filter and say science, and only science scores will be visible. I can select English and science so that those two subjects are visible. Let's say I want to select people who got more than, let's say 80 marks. I can click on their scores. I can select only the scores that are more than 80. And then now I know that, okay, Manish, Nidhi, Gaurav, and Sujay, they all got more than 80 marks. Okay. So this is how you can use the filters that are there. Now, filters are very useful because there will be data where you'll be using a lot of filters. So let's say we want to select only the top people with the first 10 roll numbers. We want to look at only mathematics scores, and we want to select those who have got more than 80. Then that will be the selection. Of course, some of these things can also be done using formula. And when we do formula, we'll see how we can use formula to do some of these things. Okay. But if you're just using it simply to find what matches certain criteria, then simply putting filters is the best thing that you can do. And once you're done with your work, just pressing Alt AT will bring back data to its original state. So Alt AT for putting filters, a very quick shortcut that you can have. But you can have other shortcuts as well. So if I, let's say, click on Alt and A, it gives me all other things I can do with that. So if I press Alt A, SA, then it will sort the data alphabetically. Okay, so it is SA for sort ascending, this is sort descending, and so on. So all these things you can do if you just want to get better at using shortcuts in Excel. This is one way wherein you use the Alt key and access the tab functions very quickly from that, rather than using a mouse and then getting into each of those functions. Okay. Now, the other thing that we will be discussing today is creating copy of a sheet. Okay, because a lot of times what happens is the data that you get, let's say if you're working in a company and your boss sends you a data file, you don't want to tamper the file that he has sent. So one way is to create a duplicate file and then use it. Or in the Excel sheet itself, you can create another sheet. Okay, and it's very simple. Let's say if I want to create a copy of this, I can just either right click on this, and we have this move or copy that we are going to use. So in move or copy, it says create a copy, and I just select OK. So now I can see that there are two sheets that have the same data and data 2. Okay. You can also use Control Shift and then drag and then place it just next to that file to create copy of that. So if I have data here, I'll do Control Shift and then I have the left click of my mouse and simply drag it and drop it next to that. So now you can see that multiple copies are getting created of the same sheet that is there. This is very useful because you don't want to really mess around with the data that you have, because if you make a mistake, you might not be able to get it back. You might not be able to recover it. But if you have a copy of a sheet that you already created for yourself and you're working on that, then even if you make a mistake, you can always go and rectify that mistake. So this is what we have for the session today. I don't want to discuss a lot of things today because it will be great if you guys can spend some time and just try to learn a few things on your own. Just try to practice things that we did today. And in the next session, we'll be continuing with some of the advanced functions, because there are a lot of things to cover. We have formula to cover. We have some of the quick shortcuts that we'll be looking at. We also have data analysis tool pack that I want to talk about. So there are, and of course, the pivot table, pivot chart, and the regular charts. So all that will take a lot of time. So today we are not going to do that. So today we'll be wrapping up here. It was just half an hour session, but this is just to give you an overview as to how things are going to work. The next sessions are going to be slightly lengthy, so we'll be having roughly about 1 hour or somewhere around 75-minute sessions. And if you don't have Excel, make sure that you get it somehow, whether it is If you can possibly borrow it, in case you don't have it, you can borrow somebody's computer and then use it, or you can always get a copy for yourself if you want. Or you can also use the Google Sheets function. So if you go to Drive, you can have a sheet, and there also you all the formulae work. Of course, it looks slightly different compared to, or rather, extremely different compared to how a normal desktop version looks. Okay, so try some of these things that we did today. Try playing around the format of a particular cell, change it the way you want to. Then take some data, try sorting the data in multiple ways, try to put filters, because this is the base. Once you understand these things, you'll be able to understand and appreciate the things that we are going to do in future. But if you are not able to understand at this point of time, then the next things are going to be a little difficult for you. Okay, so spend some time on this, and I'll see you guys in the session tomorrow. And tomorrow we'll be discussing some of the formulae and Excel shortcuts. Okay, so that's it from my side. I hope you guys found the overview useful, and I'll see you guys in the next session. Okay, if there are any queries, then please let me know. All right, I'll just stop recording this session for now.